Take a breath. Just pause for a moment before you continue scrolling. Because if you found your way here today, that is not random at all. It was not a coincidence or some strange glitch in your feed. Something deep within you was looking for this message, and somehow it reached you at the right time. So stay here with me for a while. I want you to bring a specific person into your mind right now. Let their face appear clearly in your thoughts. Notice what happens inside your body when you do that. That soft pull in your chest, that mix of warmth, longing, and something you cannot fully explain in words. That feeling is not confusion. It is your heart recognizing something your mind is still trying to understand. This person did not simply enter your life by accident. On a deeper level, something within you already feels familiar with them, even if you cannot explain why. I understand how exhausting it can be to carry feelings this big when everything outside feels uncertain. All those nights you lie awake, holding everything quietly inside, wondering if you are imagining too much, wondering if any of it truly matters in the end. It does matter more than you think. You are not naive. You are not overly emotional. You are not exaggerating what you feel. You are in the middle of something that is becoming meaningful, and that is exactly why it feels so heavy right now. If you feel deeply connected to someone even when it hurts, and this message resonates with you, that is because these kinds of connections do not stay on the surface. They reach into the deepest parts of us, the parts we usually try to hide, control, or survive through. Many people think love arrives as comfort, like finally reaching calm after a long struggle. But the connections that truly transform us often come like a storm before they bring peace. They shake everything inside us that was buried under old coping habits, emotional defenses, pride, fear, and survival patterns. At first, it does not feel like growth. It feels like breaking. When someone enters your life and touches parts of you no one else could reach, your usual defenses stop working the same way. The person who always gave too much begins to realize how tired they are from constantly proving their worth and sacrificing their own needs. They start questioning why they believed love had to be earned through endless effort and emotional endurance. This realization can hurt deeply because it forces them to face the truth that they may have learned that love is not guaranteed just for being who they are. At the same time, the other person often carries a different wound. For them, closeness may have been linked with pain, loss, or betrayal. So their nervous system begins to treat intimacy as something unsafe. So they pull back, not because the connection is meaningless, but because the intensity feels overwhelming. On the surface, it looks like imbalance, like one person chasing while the other retreats. But underneath, it is two different nervous systems reacting to the same fear of rejection and not being enough. The one who pursues believes love will disappear without constant effort, so silence feels unbearable. But they slowly learn that abandoning themselves is too high a price for connection. Their value is not measured by how much pain they can endure for someone else. Meanwhile, the one who withdraws carries the fear that if they get too close, they will lose themselves or end up hurting the other person. So they create distance. But that distance rarely brings peace. Instead, it brings confusion, guilt, loneliness, and a stronger awareness of how much they actually care. Avoiding vulnerability protects them from rejection for a short time, but it also blocks them from receiving the love they secretly want. And healing does not begin in a perfect way. It often starts with confusion, inconsistency, fear, emotional overwhelm, and silence, while someone tries to understand their own emotions. Growth is messy before it becomes clear. Like a caterpillar dissolving inside a cocoon before becoming something entirely new, transformation always requires an ending first. Not physical ending, but the end of old identities, old beliefs, and old emotional defenses that cannot survive in deeper love. That is why these connections feel so intense. They reveal contradictions inside us. They show how much we want closeness, while also showing how afraid we are of it. They force us to understand the difference between attachment and real love. Attachment says, "Please do not leave me because I need you to complete what is missing in me." Real love eventually becomes something different. It says, "I want to meet you fully, while also staying whole within myself." That shift changes everything. But here is what many people miss. In every connection like this, there is a turning point. It does not arrive through a dramatic event or a perfect conversation. It does not happen because they finally say what you have been waiting to hear. It happens because of a quiet decision you make within yourself. The decision to stop waiting to be chosen and instead begin choosing yourself. When that shift happens, the entire dynamic begins to change. Not because love is magic, but because energy changes the space between two people. When you stop reaching from fear or desperation, you stop becoming something that pushes the other person away. And when you do this, for the first time, they are left alone with what they actually feel. Not their fear, not their avoidance, but the truth of their emotions. And what is real inside them does not disappear. Everything you have experienced in this waiting has meant something. Not a single moment has been wasted. Even when it feels like your love disappeared into emptiness, it did not. Love does not vanish like that. Every night you thought of someone who was not there, every moment you carried feelings alone, all of it shaped you into someone deeper, someone more capable of holding real connection when it arrives. When you cry because something meaningful also hurts, that is not weakness. Those tears come from a place inside you that refuses to abandon what it recognizes as important. Many people would have shut down by now. They would have built walls and decided that feeling this deeply is too painful. But you did not fully close yourself off. You stayed open even when it was difficult. And in a world that often rewards emotional distance, your ability to stay open is not a weakness. It is something rare. Loving without constantly calculating what you get in return is not common, but it is real strength. You chose to keep caring even when circumstances gave you every reason to stop. And that matters more than it may seem. Loving through uncertainty, distance, and silence without becoming bitter is not something everyone can do. That kind of emotional capacity is not small, it is significant. And it is exactly what is guiding you towards something real, not a connection filled with constant confusion, but something that feels steady and aligned. Not a love where you are always questioning your place or overthinking every silence. Not a connection where your emotions feel too big to be held safely. You are moving towards something that fits you naturally. A love that feels like a deep breath after holding tension for too long. That is not just a poetic idea. That is the direction things are moving in if you continue choosing yourself. So what does that look like in real life? It is not about pretending you do not feel anything. It is not about forcing detachment or using distance as punishment. It is about redirecting your energy back to yourself. You start asking yourself honest questions. Not what they need from you, not what might change their mind, but what you actually need. What would make your own life feel better today? You begin noticing parts of your life you neglected while focusing on something uncertain. You return to friendships you drifted from. You reconnect with parts of yourself you set aside. This is not about erasing love. It is about expanding your life again, so you are not living inside a space that revolves around one person and one outcome. And when you do that, something subtle begins to change in how you carry yourself. It is not sudden. It is quiet, but it is real. You stop feeling like an unfinished sentence that is still waiting for its ending. You stop living like you are stuck in a waiting state, as if your real life cannot properly start until this one situation finally resolves itself. Instead, you begin to feel like a complete person, someone whose life already has weight, depth, color, and forward movement, no matter what any single relationship is doing or not doing at this moment. You start to feel grounded in yourself in a way that is new and steady. It is like your existence is no longer suspended in someone else's uncertainty or mood. That feeling of groundedness, that quiet inner stability, changes everything about how you move through the world. It becomes a kind of inner home you can return to again and again. People around you can sense it too, even if they cannot clearly explain what has shifted. There is something noticeable about a person who is truly at home within themselves. It carries a natural presence. It is magnetic in the real sense of the word, not forced or performed. It does not chase attention or validation. Instead, it draws things in naturally because it is rooted and calm. And the person you have been emotionally connected to through all of this, they will feel that change more than anyone else. They will notice the difference in your energy, even if nothing is said directly. Something in the dynamic shifts, quietly but clearly. This is not a strategy or a method. It is important to understand that clearly. This is not about learning a technique to create a certain outcome or control a situation. It is not about manipulating feelings or responses. It is simply what naturally happens when someone stops approaching love from a place of lack and starts relating from a place of fullness. The entire emotional dynamic begins to breathe differently. It becomes less tense, less desperate, and more open to something real. In that space, something genuine finally has room to exist in a way it could not before. When you are no longer grasping, the connection either reveals its truth or transforms into something healthier. But either way, you are no longer stuck in emotional survival mode. Now, it is important to talk about them for a moment, because there is something you may need to see more clearly. They are not the villain in your story. Even though there may have been moments where pain made it easier to see them that way, or where silence and distance made everything feel harsh and confusing, that is not the full truth of who they are. They are not a cold or indifferent person. They are not someone who simply does not care. What you have experienced as emotional distance is often something more complicated inside them. At some point in their life, usually long before you entered it, they learn to associate love with something risky or painful, something that costs too much, something that can lead to loss, disappointment, or emotional damage that feels overwhelming. This is not a conscious decision they made. Nobody really chooses this in a clear, logical way. These patterns are formed through experience, often very early experiences, before a person even understands how to name what they are feeling. Over time, it becomes part of how they respond to closeness. So when you see them pulling away, what is actually happening underneath is often fear being activated, not lack of care. It is a protective response built from old emotional conditioning, not a reflection of your worth or the value of what exists between you. There are moments when they think about you more than you realize, especially in quiet moments, when distractions fade and their mind is left alone with itself. You come into focus. Not as an idea, but as a presence they cannot fully dismiss. They may feel your absence, even in the very space they created by stepping back. There is often a tension inside them that does not simply disappear with distance. Because what they feel is not only about physical closeness, it is about emotional impact, memory, and unresolved inner conflict. But that internal process is not something you can do for them. No matter how much you understand them, no matter how clearly you see their wounds, and no matter how much love you are willing to offer, you cannot walk their healing path for them. That is something only they can move through on their own time and in their own way. What you can do, however, is something very powerful, even if it seems quiet on the surface. You can choose not to let their fear define your self-worth. You can refuse to turn their confusion into evidence that you are not enough. You can stop absorbing their unresolved pain as if it belongs to you. Instead, You begin to hold yourself with more dignity, more patience, and more steady self-respect. And when you do that consistently, something changes not just inside you, but in how life responds to you. And if they eventually move through their own internal process, what they will encounter is not someone who is waiting in desperation or emotional emptiness. They will find you whole, not reduced by waiting, not weakened by uncertainty, not defined by longing, but standing in your own life with clarity, stability, and emotional presence. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine something simple but powerful. Imagine a morning that feels lighter than the ones you are used to right now. You wake up, and the first thing you notice is that familiar heaviness is gone. That weight in your chest that has been sitting there for so long you almost forgot what it felt like not to have it. It is not there anymore. Not because your emotions disappeared, not because you stopped caring, not because you forced yourself to detach. It is gone because something inside you finally settled. Something unresolved finally reached clarity within you. What once felt unfinished no longer feels like it is hanging in the future. It feels complete in the present moment. There is a kind of emotional quietness that replaces the constant inner noise. Now imagine turning and seeing this person clearly in front of you. Not through anxiety, not through fear, not through uncertainty, but with clear emotional vision. You notice something different in their expression. There is no longer hesitation or inner conflict showing through their eyes. That quality of being physically present, but emotionally elsewhere, is no longer there. Instead, there is calmness. There is steadiness. There is a sense of internal peace that comes from clarity of choice. They are not questioning things anymore. They are not holding back parts of themselves. They are simply there, fully present, without emotional distance creating confusion between you. Imagine what it would feel like to experience a love that does not keep you awake at night. A love that does not turn your mind into a place of constant analysis, replaying conversations, wondering what went wrong or what might go wrong next. In this kind of love, your nervous system is allowed to relax. You are not always scanning for signs of change or preparing yourself for emotional withdrawal. You are not bracing for disappointment all the time. There is stability instead of uncertainty. In that space, the question of whether you are enough stops existing as a question at all. Not because you forced someone to validate you, but because you are with someone who sees your worth as natural, not something to be measured or proven repeatedly. You are seen fully. The parts of you that feel strong, the parts you are proud of, and even the parts you are still working through are all held in the same space of acceptance. Nothing about you needs to be hidden or minimized. And this is not just an imagined story to make you feel better. It is what naturally grows when two people stop carrying unresolved pain into each other and start doing their own inner work. When they stop expecting the other person to fix what life has already shaped within them. Instead, they come together as two individuals who have done enough healing to actually meet each other with presence rather than projection. This is what is being built right now, even through uncertainty, even through distance, even through emotional difficulty. The process is not always visible while it is happening. Every time you choose yourself instead of falling into fear, every time you take care of your own emotional space instead of spiraling into worry, you are strengthening that foundation quietly. Do not let the difficult middle part convince you that the outcome is not real. The middle is always the hardest stage because it is full of uncertainty and lacks immediate clarity. But it is temporary. What is being built beneath it is not temporary. It has depth, it has direction, and it is unfolding in its own timing, not according to fear. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not missing your chance at love. You are in a transition phase of deep personal change, where your emotional patterns are being reshaped into something stronger and more stable. Your story is not fading or ending. It is developing in ways you cannot fully see yet, but they are still forming. Each choice you make toward healing instead of fear is part of that development. Keep moving forward, not because everything is already easy, but because what is meant for you is not disappearing. It is still aligned with you, even if it is not fully visible yet. No amount of fear, distance, or timing confusion can erase what is genuinely meant to grow into your life in a healthy way. And as you look at your life right now, decide firmly that you deserve the same care, the same emotional safety, and the same consistency that you naturally give to others. If this message touched something inside you, take a moment to acknowledge that feeling